The resemblance is uncanny, like a ghost from the past. The man seated on this chair appears to be Ferdinand Marcos, the former president of the Philippines, 50 years after he imposed martial law and threw thousands of his opponents in prison. In fact, these are actors at an anti-Marcos rally. They poke fun at the former president and lampoon his wife, Imelda Marcos, who gained notoriety for her decadent lifestyle, including a huge collection of shoes bought with public money. Their satirical look at the Marcos dynasty hides a very real fear that Marcos's son, Ferdinand Junior, will become the next president of the Philippines. 35 years after Marcos Sr. fled to Hawaii, the country's most famous family is on the verge of a comeback.
Charot! No to the Marcoses! Never again!
This activist was imprisoned in 1985 during Marcos's reign. Today, she's worried about the country's future, but few people share her fears. Known as Bong Bong, Marcos Jr. has enjoyed a constant lead in the polls. Here, during a campaign stop in his northern Philippine stronghold, he's welcomed as a messiah by a crowd stretching 22 kilometers.
Why are you the best president for Philippines?
Ask them! Don't ask me, ask them!
Young people, who make up more than half of voters, have no memory of his father's dictatorship. With 6 million followers on Facebook and a strong presence on social media, he struck a chord with Filipino youth.
Because she is very smart and very kind of our people.
Older voters, meanwhile, say they miss the country's golden age. 50 years ago, the Philippines was one of the richest countries in the region, but today it lags far behind South Korea, Thailand, and even Indonesia. Where does this adoration come from? Since 1986, school history textbooks have depicted Marcos Sr. as a bloody dictator. That amounts to indoctrination, according to these supporters.
After President Marcos was removed from the office, our country went down. What was written in the textbook are not the truth. They lied.
The younger Ferdinand, who is 64, says he was too young to be held responsible for crimes committed during the dictatorship. He avoids the subject, preferring to talk about the future.
Unity in the country. That is our slogan. It started as a whisper, but not anymore. The whisper has become the cry of the nation. So what is the Filipino slogan for today?
Marcos Jr. was never held responsible for human rights violations during the dictatorship. This human rights lawyer dismisses fears that he's a danger to democracy.
The guilt of the father, if any, is not the guilt of the son. 100% sure there will be no return to martial law.
Marcos has joined forces with Sara Duterte, the daughter of the popular current president, Rodrigo Duterte, who claims he's crushed the country's drug trade. She's hoping to become vice president.
BBM and Sara, the unity team. All right, the best combination of leaders we've had in the past 30 years.
The two families have built an alliance that could govern for many years. If he wins the presidency, will Ferdinand Marcos Jr. rewrite his country's history? The official account of the Marcos years, including his crimes, can be found in the government archives.
The stories of these people haunt those who do research here.
From 1972, 70,000 of Marcos's opponents were imprisoned, 34,000 were tortured, and more than 3,000 killed, according to Amnesty International. They represent 9 years of bloody repression in the name of anti-communism and with the support of the United States.
Marcos said, we did impose martial law, but it is a smiling martial law. There's peace and order in the streets. There's more stability in the country. This is stability. This is smiling. This is the brutal hand that was not seen by the Filipino people. Marcos Jr. is saying this may be the sins of his father. But at that point in time, in 1986, Marcos Jr. was already a high local politician. He is responsible for providing the culture of impunity and propping up the regime until its very end.
The Marcos family is also accused of stealing billions of euros of public funds in one of the world's worst cases of embezzlement.
We feel there's money in China, there's money in the Cayman Islands, there's money, of course, in the US, and I don't know if, I haven't heard if there was really money in France too.
The Philippine government has so far recovered more than 3 billion euros from accounts in Switzerland and other countries. Marcos Jr.'s opponents say other hidden cash has been used to fund his presidential campaign.